Hey everyone, welcome to today's Explainer. We're jumping right into a super fascinating historical and literary mystery today. Have you ever noticed how some of the most profound, world-altering moments in ancient texts seem to share these incredibly bizarre, seemingly random details? Well, today we're looking at this hidden architectural connection inside biblical history. It's an intricate pattern bridging two massive events separated by hundreds of years. So get ready, because what looks like just a simple misunderstanding at first glance, it's actually a flashing neon sign for total structural upheaval.
Think about this crazy coincidence for a second. At two distinct, incredibly holy sites, during profoundly holy moments, the exact people at the center of God's unfolding plan are accused of being totally wasted, just drunk out of their minds. Why? Is that just a random ancient insult, or is there a deliberate, coded message hiding in plain sight? We're putting on our literary detective hats today to figure out exactly why these wild accusations of drunkenness are literally the key to unlocking everything that follows.
Okay, let's dive into this. On one hand, we have Hannah in the early chapters of 1 Samuel. She's at the tabernacle, right? Her lips are moving silently in prayer, and the high priest Eli just immediately assumes she's drunk. Now fast forward a few centuries to the book of Acts. The apostles are speaking in different tongues on the day of Pentecost, and the crowd looks at them and draws the exact same conclusion. They've had too much wine. The verbal parallel is just striking. In Acts, Peter even has to stand up and say, hey, these men are not drunk as you suppose. But is this just a neat little echo, or are we looking at something much, much bigger?
To figure that out, we really have to investigate the clues. Let's travel back to those early chapters of 1 Samuel. Because honestly, if we don't grasp Hannah's story, we've got absolutely no shot at understanding Pentecost.
Just look at the spiritual state of Israel's leadership at this moment. We meet High Priest Eli, and the text gives us this brilliant piece of dramatic irony. It tells us his physical eyesight hasn't completely dimmed yet, but spiritually, the guy is completely blind. He has no idea what God is doing right in front of his face. He's got these two sons running the sanctuary who the text literally calls sons of Belial. They are wildly corrupt, and Eli basically just turns a blind eye to the whole shebang. Yet who does he hit with his absolute sternest rebuke? A pious, deeply suffering woman who is just desperately seeking God.
The contrast here is absolutely staggering. Hannah defends herself, telling Eli, look, I haven't poured any strong drink into myself. I am pouring out my soul before Yahweh. She's fasting. She's in severe distress. Meanwhile, what are the actual priests, Eli's sons, doing? The exact opposite. They're abusing the sacrificial system to physically fatten themselves up, and they're literally fornicating with the women serving at the sanctuary. People often think Hannah was just this sad woman who wanted a baby. Let's completely scratch that myth right now. She is in deep, deep mourning for a barren, corrupt nation that's just rotting under Eli's failed leadership.
Which brings us to a massive question. Was Hannah just praying for a kid to fix a personal domestic issue, or was she plotting a full-blown revolution? Think about it. She promises to dedicate her child to Yahweh as a permanent Nazirite. She's envisioning a hardcore priestly and military role for him. This prayer wasn't just about her family tree. It was the linchpin for a massive social and spiritual upheaval.
Now, what's really interesting is how the ancient author actually proves this to us. They use what's called a chiastic structure. Basically, it's an ancient literary device that acts like a giant set of arrows pointing directly to the center of the text to say, hey, this is the most important part. The narrative folds perfectly in on itself. Point A matches point A prime, B matches B prime, and right there, sitting squarely in the center of it all, is Hannah's prayer and her confrontation with Eli. This ancient blueprint completely proves that her supposedly drunken prayer is the absolute foundational core of everything that's about to happen to Israel.
And what actually happens? Well, when her prayer is finally answered, she sings this incredible song of triumph. But make no mistake, this isn't some cute nursery rhyme. It is a full-on manifesto. She prophesies a sweeping, massive political and social revolution. The mighty and the feeble completely swap places. The hungry get filled up, while the fat, full elites are out begging for bread. The dead live, and the poor are exalted to sit with nobles. The sheer scale of this is immense.
And that is what she was truly agonizing over at the tabernacle. The miraculous resurrection of her barren womb wasn't just about her getting a personal blessing. It was a literal physical sign that Yahweh was starting to raise the dead nation of Israel back to life. Her answered prayer was the very first domino to fall in tearing down the systemic corruption of Eli's priesthood.
Let's move along and see how this builds, because the author of 1 Samuel tracks the rapid-fire, undeniable fulfillment of this prophecy step by step. First, a prophet declares that Eli's fat, full sons will eventually end up begging for bread. Step 2. The corruption hits a boiling point, the tabernacle is totally devastated, and the Ark of the Covenant gets exiled. Step 3. Eli himself physically staggers, falls off his seat, and dies. And finally, step 4, under the leadership of Hannah's son, Samuel, the mighty Philistines are driven out by the formerly feeble Israelites. Boom, boom, boom.
So, to quickly summarize the 1 Samuel evidence, Hannah gets accused of being drunk, right? But her drunken prayer is actually the catalyst that triggers this great national reversal. That initial bizarre accusation is intrinsically deeply linked to the subsequent toppling of Israel's wicked leaders. All right, armed with this explosive historical context, it's time for the big reveal. Let's fast forward a few centuries back to the Book of Acts, and let's view Pentecost through the lens of Hannah's story.
When you compare the scope of these two events side by side, the parallel just sharpens incredibly. Hannah's drunken prayer pleaded for a reversal within the nation of Israel and a massive victory against their immediate enemies, the Philistines. Fast forward, and the drunken sermons of the apostles at Pentecost are signaling the exact same thing, but on an unprecedented, global scale. It's a sign of a global reversal in the fortunes of Israel. The faithless leaders are about to be cut off entirely, and the Gentiles are about to be grafted in. It's the same pattern, just supersized. Because think about it. The leaders watching the apostles in Acts chapter 2, they aren't just random bystanders. The priests of Jerusalem in the 1st century are essentially a community full of Eli. They are spiritually blind leaders presiding over a completely rotten system. And just like back in 1 Samuel, this highly peculiar sign of drunkenness means that these faithless leaders are about to see their power, their entire vineyard, ripped away and given to others.
So the crucial point we really need to land on is this. The drunkenness at Pentecost is not just some funny little anecdote about people mishearing foreign languages. Not at all. It is a grave, deadly, serious warning to Israel. The utter devastation of the sanctuary at Shiloh that happened under Eli, that is about to recur. The destruction of the temple is coming. Divine judgment is right there on the horizon.
Now, to truly grasp the weight of this, we need to understand a core concept in ancient biblical literature called prophetic theater. Basically, this is when prophets, who are inspired by the Spirit, don't just speak a message out loud. They physically pre-enact the coming divine judgment. They literally become the metaphor. And this gives us the ultimate punchline to our whole mystery. The drunkenness of the apostles wasn't just some random insult thrown by the crowd. It was deliberate prophetic performance art.
But why act drunk? Why is that the sign? Well, because all throughout ancient texts, we're talking Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Zechariah, God's judgment is frequently described as a cup of wine wrath. The imagery is that God pours out this cup of wrath, forces the wicked to drink it, and it causes them to violently stumble, stagger, and fall to the ground. Drunkenness is the ultimate classic scriptural sign of impending doom.
And this brilliantly illustrates just how insanely tight this literary connection really is. Think back to High Priest Eli for a second. He falsely accused Hannah of being drunk, right? But at the very end of his life, when the horrifying news of God's judgment finally hits him, the death of his corrupt sons, the catastrophic loss of the ark, how exactly does Eli die? He staggers, falls backward off his seat, and breaks his neck. He literally falls as if struck drunk by the judgment of God, completely clearing the stage for a new era to begin.
And this is exactly why this matters so much to us as focused learners digging into these historical texts. These strange little details, a mother whispering in a tabernacle, a group of apostles speaking in tongues at a massive festival, both randomly accused of being drunk. These are not throwaway lines. They are unmistakable, flashing neon signs of structural upheaval. Drunken prayers and drunken preaching are dramatic pre-enactments of the coming judgment. They're the prophetic theater signaling that the old, corrupt guard is falling hard and a completely new era is rising.
It completely changes how you read these sources, doesn't it? It just highlights the incredible hidden architectural connections inside these ancient texts. The authors are practically shouting at us that history echoes. So I'll leave you with this final, provocative thought to ponder today. When history inevitably repeats its bizarre, curious signs, will we have the eyes to recognize the prophetic theater before the fall? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer. Keep seeking those deeper connections, and I'll see you next time.